world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is probably going to be a bonus podcast for Thursday, January 29th. Now, I'm sitting here live on TikTok, doing something a little different. I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, going live, talking to people. Gonna do it a little early or later than I normally would, or early depending on which way you look at it. And we're going to be talking about news, politics, and everything else. Let's see if we get anybody in the room. We are going to give it a shot here, see what happens. Hey, Bren, good to see you. Going live a lot later than I normally would. I'm up, I'm awake. Figured I might as well try to do something. Brent says, what's going on? Not much. Got done recording with Mike, the Rational Boomer, earlier. Oh, you just got off work? Nice. I am, what would be today's guest on the Rational Boomer podcast. Another great show. Mike and I got into a lot of different things. And as always, had a great conversation. Oh, you started listening to it? Well, good. There's always stuff to talk about. I got done doing Mike's show. Then I recorded my podcast for today. Started way later than I wanted. It's actually uploading right now. So that'll be up here in a little bit. And then at some point, this will be up over there on the YouTubes as well. Don't know how many people we're going to get in here tonight. Don't know how late I'm going to go. We're going to see how many people we get in the room and what we get talking about. There's always stuff to talk about in the world of news and politics. And it's good to try different periods of time, different, hours and stuff, because you get different people's perspectives. Varying people are worried about varying things, and hopefully I can calm some people down about some of the stuff that's going on. Now, we have this, we've got ice in Minneapolis. And right now, it sounds like, and everything looks like, they are going away, right? They get rid of Bovino, and it looks like they are starting to calm things down. Oh, Brent says FBI going to collect 2020 ballots in Georgia. Yeah, they served a search warrant. They started collecting all of that. This is nothing more than an attempt for Donald Trump. He is trying to, or somebody around him is trying to distract from everything going on in Minneapolis, from the government funding fight that is going on right now in Washington, D.C., how his own party and his own administration is turning on each other, trying to figure out what they need to do, how they need to spin it, how do they need to adjust it to end up being coming out as a positive, right? Like, oh, well, see, we fixed it. We got rid of Bovino, or, do they have to get rid of Kristi Noem, or is it going to be Stephen Miller, or who do they have to get rid of in order to, try to come out of this as with some kind of a win? And they're not going to be able to spin it. We've all seen everything that's going on, and ultimately the blame rests with the presidency. But that's not preventing them from trying to do that. I think them going after the Georgia ballots is an attempt to distract from everything going on with this administration and how bad everything is. And they're going to try to come up with some kind of a reason as to what happened in 2020. And they're going to try to come up with some kind of nefarious plot and say that, well, see, the Democrats cheated, so we need to do this or that to prevent them from cheating again. It's an effort to maybe even intimidate the states into doing what Donald Trump wants when it comes to the 2026 midterms, because he is terrified of losing those midterms. Brent says, I don't think they will get fired, as who would replace them. That I don't know. But see, Donald Trump has never been one to shy away from firing somebody, especially if he thinks they make him look dumb. And that's the problem here. He's going to be looking for a way to get rid of somebody if he thinks getting rid of them will make him look better. And if he can blame all of the problems on that person. Because that's how Donald Trump acts. Nothing that goes wrong is ever his fault. It is always going to be the blame. The blame is always going to land on somebody else. And he is looking to take it out on somebody, whether that is Kristi Noem, whether that is Stephen Miller. Brent says Kristi probably has lots on Trump and Miller. Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. We probably don't want to know what she has on either of them or both of them. And she will use it against them at some point. Would not surprise me in the least. If it means protecting her job. Now, there was a meeting the other day in the Oval Office which Stephen Miller was not allowed to attend. I think it was in the Oval Office, but it doesn't matter. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem were talking, and she basically said, well, all of the things I said about Alex Preddy, about him being, a violent extremist and a criminal and all of those things, I was told to say them by Stephen Miller. And she's throwing Miller under the bus. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if Miller ends up being on the outside looking in, and ends up being the next one to get removed, just because, that's a big problem. Brent says, didn't they recant those statements about Alex? Yeah, they did. They did walk it all back, and they came out and said, well, I don't remember exactly what they said, but I'm guessing it was something like, they were fed bad information, or they didn't have all the facts, or they hadn't seen the video, or something like that. But they did recant all of those statements because it was blatantly false, and we saw what was happening with our own eyes. And they are hoping that we will forget what we saw, believe whatever they tell us, and that they can kind of talk this thing down through everything that is going on and move it around so that, we forget about it by the midterm elections here at the end of the year, because they know how bad this makes them look, and they are desperate to, win the midterms. Donald Trump is terrified of what could happen with those midterm elections. He doesn't want to lose any sort of power in the midterms, and he's sitting on such a razor-thin majority. They need every seat they can get in the House. But Ren says, do most states vote by paper or electronic? I don't know which way is the more popular. Like here in Iowa, I know what we do, and that is the Scantron style fill in the circle paper ballot. And you fill in the oval, and then they run it through a machine and scan it that way. And if it doesn't take or whatever, then they hand paper count it. at the end, and they can end up, uh, you know, figuring it through that way. 865 says electronic here in San Antonio. Yeah, every state's different. I mean, I remember the controversy surrounding the 2000 election with Al Gore in Florida, where they had the hanging chads, where they had the punch card, and you had to go in and you had to punch out the proper circle, and they were trying to figure out what counts as a properly voted ballot, what didn't, and they had the hanging chads, and it just highlighted how screwy every state is and how every state does things differently. Now, I don't think any state still uses the punch out method, but still, every state is in charge of their own elections, and every state runs and handles the voting differently. Brent says we do that here, talking about the Scantron fill in the oval style ballot. I mean, I don't mind it. Brent says you never heard of the punch card ballot. Yeah, look up the hanging chads from the 2000 election. They were going through as part of it when they were trying to figure out what counted as a proper ballot and who voted for Bush, who voted for Gore. Did they have to fully punch the circle out and have all of it removed from the page, or if it was some people accidentally started to push through one and it was only part way torn and they fully pushed all the way through on another one. Which one does it count for? It was a mess. And it took them till it was into December before they had the results of the 2000 election. It was crazy, and it was a mess. And you said, Bren, you said it sounds sketchy. It gets sketchier because Jeb Bush, George W. Bush's brother, was governor of Florida at the time. The whole thing it was a very, very weird election. Darling Cat says there were hanging chad earrings. I'm not surprised that happened. 865 says Kavanaugh and Barrett were helping count the ballots, I believe. I don't know about that. Kavanaugh maybe, but I don't think Barrett's that old. Let me look. But I think Barrett is would have barely been old enough to vote in that election, I think. Let me look. Amy Coney Barrett. Oh, no, she's older than I thought. So she might have been counting the ballots. Apparently, yeah, she would have been, well, she just had a birthday, so that would make her 54. I thought she was a little younger than that, but she could have been counting the ballots. I'm not sure. Brent says now she drinks the Kool-Aid. Well, they all do. All of the Republicans, for now, they are at least appearing to drink the Kool-Aid. I've talked about it in other lives and on my podcast. I think what's going to happen is when they decide to move on Donald Trump, I think it is going to become a dog pile. I think it's going to become a dog, like even his most staunch supporters, when it comes time for them to move, you are going to see like 95% of the Republican Party say, yeah, fuck that guy. And then after he's gone, it's going to be one of those things where, similar to 1930s Germany, where if, like you go into Germany, they did a study right after, like in the 50s, and they were asking people, and apparently they couldn't find a single person that supported the ruling party in 30s, 1940s Germany by 1950 something. It was weird. Like everybody was uh, against what happened. Even the ones that were very visible and that they could prove were in part of it, they were trying to walk it back and say, yeah, we didn't really support it. We were saying what we had to. Darling says, I don't think they are there yet. No, I don't think they're quite there. But I think what's going to happen is there's going to come something, right? There's going to come that moment. And they're having the discussions behind closed doors. We've kind of heard of that already. When Don Bacon, the representative from Omaha, said that they had the votes should Donald Trump invade Greenland, that they had the votes to impeach and remove him. It tells me they're having conversations behind closed doors. And when the time comes, I do 100% believe they're going to dogpile him. 865 says we need the dogpile now. I think it's coming. It's just a matter of time. Brent says, will that small kid get released from Texas detention? Poor kid. He needs his mama. I don't know. I would hope so. They're going after the kids, trying to prove a point. And one of the things they said they supposedly tried to turn him over to family and stuff, but they wouldn't open the door. Yeah, because they weren't dumb enough to fall for that trap. Hopefully he does get released, that he should not be in detention like that. And even if this was the case where the father was being detained for something, the correct response is not to put the kid in detention as well, because the kid didn't do anything. There should have been CPS and a foster care system or something like that to help the kid, but they didn't do that. They didn't do that because they don't care. The cruelty is the point when it comes to ICE. Darling Cat says, my friend who's younger says we haven't suffered enough. No, the Republicans haven't suffered enough. They haven't suffered to the point where they've realized that they're on a losing situation. They haven't realized that nothing they can do is going to turn this around, and they are not going to win the midterms. 865 says, Texas Rep Castro here is trying to get the kid home. And might be successful. I know there was another kid, a 2-year-old, that was taken. They were told by the court not to have the kid leave the state, and the kid was sent to Texas, and ultimately was gone. And an attorney for the family was able to go down to Texas and retrieve that child. So hopefully they can end up getting the kid released from ICE detention. And this is another one of those stories that is going to haunt the Republicans all the way through. Brent says, oh good, he's pretty sick. What are you talking about, Bren? Are you... Oh, he's with his dad. Okay, the kid. Yeah, it sounds like the kid isn't doing well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard that he's apparently come down with something. And they're fighting to get him released. And then not only should he get released, but he should also be getting some medical treatment. But again, when it comes to ICE, the cruelty is the point. Darling Katz says, I keep thinking, where is CPS? Those could be citizens. Birthright is still law. Again, this administration doesn't care about birthright citizenship. They want to try to do away with it. They want to try to set up some sort of birthright purity test. And basically, well, you don't automatically get it. You have to have at least one parent that is, a citizen, and you want to have, etc. It's dumb. Changing it would cause a complete and total mess. There's no reason to change birthright citizenship. It has been a thing for as we currently define it, for at least 140 years. Darling Cat says, I understand this, admin. It's breaking our democracy. They're trying. They're trying to break as much as they can on the way out the door. And I think some of them at least realize that this is the last gasp for this MAGA movement. That by 2028, and this is something Mike and I over on the Rational Boomer podcast talked about for today's episode. By 28, when we hit the next general election and we select the next president, the biggest two voting blocks are going to be the millennials and the Gen Zs. And the old guard that would have really voted for this, the baby boomers, are dying out. It's going to be the younger crowd, and they're not for as much of this as the older crowd. Yeah, I'm not taking any risks there with Tom Tiger. He says, enjoy the next 3 years. I'm pretty sure you meant that as a Trump supporter, so I went ahead and blocked you. Not dealing with it. Hopefully, I end up not getting a restriction this time. Last time I did a late night live, I got restrictions hit within the first 10 minutes. I've gone past the 10-minute window this time, so that's a good start. But we're going to have to fight for the next 3 years. Now, if the Democrats win the midterms, like I think they will, we're going to be able to block a whole lot of what Donald Trump wants to do and what this administration wants to do. It's going to be full of impeachment inquiries. It's going to be full of all sorts of stuff where we are holding public hearings, etc., trying to bring awareness to everything this administration is going on. Plus, they won't be able to pass anything through Congress with Democrats holding at least one house. If they hold both, Donald Trump's getting nothing through, including Supreme Court picks. Bren says, yeah, don't mess with Trump-la-fucks. Nope, don't mess with them at all. All they do is report you and get your live taken down. And I don't deal with it. I'd rather block them. I'm sure I could have a larger following if I didn't, because some of them would jump in and follow just to shit post or hate post on me and troll me in the comments, but it's not worth it. Not in the least. Bren says, who do you think the Democratic presidential nominees would be? Well, it's way too early to tell, first of all. We are 3 years, realistically 2 years, out from 2028. We got to get through the rest of this year, all of 27, before we're even into the primary season of 28. And for all we know, like right now, Gavin Newsom looks like the clear front runner. Okay? But he's peaking rather early. Most of the time, you don't have a front runner this early. And when they do, when they are out in front this far, they fall off, they drop out of the way. Somebody else comes up and comes to the front of the crop. you never know what could happen. Now, what we could have happen, I mean, there are so many options that could be out there. For example, you have, and I don't know that she would actually run. Right now, some of the polls are saying Kamala Harris is by far and away the front runner. I don't know that she's going to run. But with her having been the most recent Democratic sitting president or vice president, it makes sense that she was included in the poll. Then you have Gavin Newsom, and then you have Pete Buttigieg, and you have people. Some people are suggesting Shapiro in Pennsylvania. You have Andy Beshear out of Kentucky, Roy Cooper out of North Carolina. It could be. Brent says she wouldn't run, in my opinion, talking about Kamala. I mean, she might not. That's going to be up to her to decide when the time comes. But it's going to be a different race come that point. And there are so many options from the Democratic side of things. You have J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois. You have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. Again, could be potential options. However, I don't know that the Democrats are going to be willing to put a woman up against any Republican, including J.D. Vance. It may be another situation like what we saw with Biden, where it is, I wouldn't say somebody as old as Biden, as I was talking about with Mike, the Rational Boomer, earlier on what is now today's Rational Boomer podcast. I suggested that it could be somebody younger, that even Gavin Newsom, who is, in his late 50s at this point, is too old for the millennials and the Gen Zs to end up voting for. We need somebody younger. One name that keeps coming up is, if he gets reelected, is Jon Ossoff in Georgia. I've seen some of the stuff where he is talking, and he sounds like he could potentially have a shot. And he is only, I think he's like 38, 40, something like that. Darling Cat says, old guard out, Newsom is viable. Newsom's viable, but the problem is he reeks of establishment Democrat, right? That's one of his problems. He sounds like what we have heard out of the Democratic Party since the days of Bill Clinton. We need somebody more like Mamdani. And, I keep suggesting we need somebody who is going to run on an FDR-style platform. Some kind of, something like that. Brent says, well, whoever it is, they will have a mess to clean up. Oh, 100%. 100%. D. Rips says he's the mirror of Trump. Gavin Newsom being the mirror of Trump isn't exactly accurate. What Gavin Newsom is doing is he's making fun of Donald Trump, and he's saying and doing the things that Donald Trump is doing to call out the way Donald Trump is talking and acting. It's all an act. If Donald Trump wasn't president, he wouldn't be saying or doing those kind of things. But he's also kind of proving that the left needs somebody who would be willing to do those kind of things. Fat Boy says, look at California, Newsom not viable. Yeah, and that's why you're blocked. That's the funny thing. They point at California. The right always does. And they try to say that Newsom's making California horrible, etc. California by itself has the fourth or fifth largest GDP in the world. They could support themselves as their own country 110%. Without question, and still be way more productive than most of the world. I don't see how they can say that Gavin Newsom is destroying it when it's that way. Gen X Sooner says, do you think Dems will cave on ICE funding? They always cave. I don't think so. I think one of the reasons why they may end up not caving, and why they may end up succeeding here, is because of what happened in October, November with the last government shutdown. See, in that government shutdown, they ended up, afterward, they got guarantees and they got funding passed to keep food stamps and other things like that funded all the way through the fiscal end of the fiscal year, which is September. So it's not going to be as hazardous for the Democrats to hold out and block it. And it's not like if they say, well, we're not funding DHS right now, that ICE is going to suddenly have no money. They still have $18 billion that was passed in the one big bullshit bill. Darling Cat says CA is moving in and driving up home prices here, but they'll make a hard red county purple. If Californians moving into where? What part of the country are you in, Darling Cat? I mean, if they are moving from California to wherever, and they're doing it for better jobs, yeah, you're right. They are going to raise house prices, and they could end up, if insufficient numbers, they could end up changing the demographic. And that's something Republicans haven't counted on. I love it when you see like Texas and some of these other states come out and say, well, see, look, all the people from California are moving to Texas. Oh, isn't it great? Darling Cat says, Douglas County, close to Tahoe, a retirement and a sundowner town. Oh, you mean someplace we should send the orange one? Because he's sundowning 90% of the time. But, yeah, I mean, it will help put Arizona back in as a swing state and potentially flip it purple. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of surprises in 2026. I really do. I think you're going to see some races flip that nobody suspected. And I think that the Republicans are going to be knocked on their ass by how bad they lose the midterms. And when they do, their willingness to support Donald Trump is going to go down the shitter. Realistically. Mushroom says, I hope so. Well, I mean, think about it like this. Donald Trump comes out and, he's going to be out campaigning, and he is diehard campaigning already, trying to prove that he can win the midterms, that they need to have, that's one of the reasons he was here in Iowa just a day and a half ago. He was trying to drum up support because they're worried they could lose Iowa. They could lose some seats. Well, he's out campaigning like he's on the ballot. And when it fails and they lose the House, and I'm thinking they could lose the House by anywhere from 30 to 50 seats. And I know that's a wide range. Darling says, I predict an immigration facility in my county soon. This community won't disagree. Well, that's too bad. It's too bad that they would actually go that route. But I think when the House flips, and I think they could, 30 to 50 seats, Republicans are going to be shocked, right? I mean, they held the House last election cycle, but they went in holding 5 seats, a 5-seat majority prior to the election. They came out of the election in 24 only holding a 3-seat majority. They barely held the House. And when they flipped the House in 22, they only flipped like 6 seats or something. It was ridiculous. Like they barely flipped it. They were predicting, well, we were thinking it was going to be Democrats gaining seats, and we were wrong. But the Republican side was talking about how they were going to get 30 or 40 seats, and they just barely crossed the finish line to have control. I think what's going to happen here is come November, Democrats are going to take the House, without a doubt. And they may actually take the Senate. It's possible. It's a long shot, but every day that goes by without passing the ACA subsidies, and the more the economy gets worse and the more bad things that come out about ICE and everything else and everything along the way, I think it increases the chances of the Democrats taking the Senate. The Republicans, they're going to look at Donald Trump as a loser. He's going to be a lame duck without having any sort of control of Congress. We won't be able to get hardly anything passed or anything done. Democrats are going to be investigating anything and everything he does and everybody involved around him. And Republicans may say, yeah, fuck it, time to get rid of this guy. And either they move on their own or they jump on board when the Democrats do it. One way or the other, I think they dogpile on him and they kick him out and they decide to make their move and go for J.D. Vance. Now, everyone says J.D. Vance could be worse than Donald Trump. And I don't think so. For multiple reasons. One, J.D. Vance does not have the hold over the Republican Party that Donald Trump does. He just doesn't. Okay? When J.D. goes, Brent says J.D. is lame. Yeah. People in the Republican Party only like J.D. Vance because he's connected to Donald Trump. Darling says agreed, J.D. low. Yeah, they don't like J.D. Vance at all. So when he comes out, if he becomes president, like I think he will be between now and January 20th, 2029, and for those before somebody says it in the comments, if something happens, no, when he takes the oath of office, he does not start a new 4-year term. He would end up serving whatever days are left in Donald Trump's term. But anyway, when he takes over, he will try to get Congress to do the things he wants, etc. And nothing's going to happen because they're not going to like him. And if he takes over because the Republicans turned on Donald Trump and they forcibly removed him, whether it was through the 25th or impeachment or they forced him to resign or something like that, I firmly believe J.D. Vance is going to be given marching orders by the Republican Party for how to fix their image going into whatever election is coming up next after that. And they are going to end up having to, toe the line. He's going to get rid of pretty much all of the cabinet. He's going to walk the straight and narrow. And he's not going to make ripples. Because they're going to say, you make ripples, we're going to get rid of you too. D-Rips says, look at how fast they turned on Pence. 110%. If Mike Pence had done what Donald Trump wanted him to do on January 6, 2021, and not just ceremonially counted the votes, the electoral votes, like he was supposed to, it actually overturned the election. They would have loved him. But he did the right thing, and they were building gallows for him. Brent says Mike Johnson hasn't been around. No, he's been in hiding a little bit. He's doing whatever he can to stay out, to keep a low profile, because everybody knows he's bought and controlled by Donald Trump. Darling says, Darling Cat says, I think the elections to come are not a foregone conclusion. Nobius holding AKA Dem or Republican. What do you mean? Like, you don't think it's a guarantee the Dems win? Or you don't think the elections are going to happen? Which way do you mean that? because I think it's almost a foregone conclusion the Dems win. Economy's in the shitter and getting worse. Oh, Darling Katz says, I think it'll be stopped or rigged. I don't. They're going to try and they're going to fail. Because they've already basically called their shot, right? Donald Trump has said things like, well, maybe we shouldn't hold elections and things. They're ready for it. This has been their playbook going on now pretty much since 2020. Democrats know how to go against it, go against the courts. The only thing they may try to do, and again, I can see the courts tossing it out if they tried, is saying, well, yeah, we're not going to hold our elections for state rep in red states that Democrats wouldn't win anyway. And that they're just going to say, well, this person won this district, etc. We're going to give them the win. But I can see their own voters being pissed off enough that next time they get a chance to vote them out, that they would. Because one thing is certain. One of the things about Republicans in almost every case, regardless of age, they love showing up to vote, and they vote every chance they get in every election they get a chance to. And if their own party says, well, yeah, we're just going to award the victory over here, you don't need to vote, it's going to piss them off. Gen X Sooner says, efforts to gain access to state voter rolls is very alarming. He's trying to rig it. I don't know that he's trying to rig it necessarily. I think they're looking for places where they can try to prove their claims. They're trying to come up with something to where they can actually point to and pre-point to fraud for when they lose, right? Well, see, we found it in 2024. We found they did this. Oh, clearly they must have cheated. They're just looking for reasons for when they lose. And they may try to do some bullshit, but it's not going to work. I don't think it's going to happen at all. The one thing that is certain when it comes to this administration, that's almost always true, is they fuck up. They have these grand plans, but they're like, oh, well, we're going to do this. And they have no idea how to even begin doing the things they're doing. And then they just hope that it's going to work out for the best. Soft Place to Land says, I think they'll succeed. Too many powerful people backing them, including law enforcement. I don't. I really don't think they're going to succeed. And in part because they saw what happened in Minneapolis. I think they're starting to very quickly realize there's more of us than there are of them. And their plans about use of force and military, etc., aren't going to work. And Donald Trump is completely underwater, whether he wants to admit it or not. He's got like a 60% disapproval rating on the economy, with only like an 18% approval rating. I think they're hoping that it will actually, the midterms will go against the Republicans. I think they're actually kind of hoping that the Democrats take over, so some of the heat is off of them. And I think what they want, I could be wrong, wouldn't be the first time I've been wrong. I'm thinking what they are hoping is that the Democrats get control of at least one chamber in the midterms. Then they're going to get rid of Donald Trump, whether it's the Big Mac that gets him or they remove him. And then they can go with J.D. Vance and say, well, see, you got to give J.D. another 4 years because those damn evil Democrats prevented him from doing anything. I mean, I can see their playbook. They script it from a mile away. Darling Katz says, we'll see tomorrow on the Senate voting. We'll see, yeah. I don't know what is going to happen with that. I don't think the Democrats are going to actually push it through. I think they are going to end up not funding ICE. Well, not giving additional funding to ICE. ICE will still have some funding available. Brent says they always fuck things up. 110%. This administration, if there's one thing you can guarantee, it's that they are going to fuck things up. Darling Katz says, and yet it's still open season for ICE in Minnesota. It needs to stop now. Shut the Senate down. Well, shutting the government down wouldn't stop the Senate. But shutting the government down, it won't be nearly as bad as what happened in November, because things like food stamps and Medicaid and other benefits will still get paid. That funding has already been guaranteed. This would just affect certain things. I'm not sure what the entire list is. And in fact, they are kind of talking about passing everything to just only pass everything else except this extra ICE funding. Because remember, ICE has funding because of the one big bullshit bill. And they have like $18 billion or had. And during Biden's last year, they only had a budget of $10 billion. And now this funding bill they're trying to pass is going to give ICE another $10 billion. ICE doesn't need that kind of money. And ICE would still be able to operate, unfortunately, without the extra $10 billion. So I think the Democrats need to do whatever they can to prevent that funding from going through. Soft Place to Land says, do you think Vance is worse than Trump? Yes, but no. And what I mean by that is he probably have more evil intentions than Donald Trump? Yes. Does he have the ability to carry them out? No. He's not liked. He does not have the same hold over the Senate. They're using him right now because he is the guy in the position. Okay? If J.D. Vance was still just a senator, they'd hate his guts. They don't like J.D. Vance. But he's also not as usable as Donald Trump. So because he is smarter, that he is going to actually listen to advisors and things, it's going to be worse for the Republicans. They're going to have a problem with J.D. Vance being, if he becomes president, because they're not going to be able to pat him on the back and tell him he's a genius and hope for the best. Darling Cat says procedural motions word. It could. Jessica Kelly says, what do you think about Newsom? Well, I was talking about Newsom a little earlier, but Gavin Newsom, I think, has peaked too early when it comes to presidential run. Almost every single time when you have a front runner this early, when you are talking, we are still, what would it be, 9-10 months ahead of the midterm elections, and then we still have 2 years beyond that to go, where we are talking about any sort of a front runner. In 2018, we were not talking about Joe Biden being the presidential candidate. Good night, Bren. And as you know, you can catch this live eventually. It'll be up over on YouTube, so you can catch whatever you miss. You just don't have somebody this early having, being almost at the top of the polls and being the one everybody's talking about as being maybe the next candidate. And by the time the election comes around, still being that person. Right? When you look at like 2018, we were not talking about Joe Biden being the Democratic nominee. Not even in the discussion. Darling Cat says, thanks for sharing your thoughts and opinions tonight. Well, like I said, this is going to be up over on my YouTube page, Analytical Iowan on YouTube. If you want to catch the rest of the live, I don't know how much longer I'm going to go. But, if you want to catch the rest, that's where it's going to be at. I post all my lives up over there. Gen X Sooner says, I saw that Newsom is sending help to Tennessee to recover from the winter storm. FEMA won't help. Yeah, FEMA's not there. You know, when Biden was around, when Biden was president, if this storm would have hit under Biden, and thanks everybody who has followed, but when Biden was president and they talked about a storm like this, he had FEMA ready to go. All he was waiting for was the emergency declarations from the states saying, hey, we need help. The minute he got those, FEMA trucks were rolling. Where's FEMA? They're not around. They're not doing anything. Now, do you hear anything from the Republicans on the right saying, well, where's that 750 from FEMA? That's just not enough money? No, they're not saying a damn thing. Under Biden, they would have at least gotten 750 right off the bat and been able to file claims for everything else afterward. The 750 was immediate, and then they were going to make people whole on the backside as people were dealing with their insurance and everything and trying to do all of that, because there's a whole process to it. But all we heard out of creators on the right and people on the right, etc., was how FEMA wasn't doing anything and FEMA wasn't doing enough and it was all Biden's fault. Well, where are those same creators now, where FEMA's nowhere to be seen and it's all Donald Trump's fault as they gutted FEMA? They were even trying to call people back to work that they had laid off at FEMA to get them to come back and help fill in the gaps where, you know, they needed people now, because, you know, they let people go without realizing that there's a reason these people have jobs, even if they weren't actively doing something in the moment. But see, Donald Trump doesn't know how any of that works, and he doesn't care. Look what he did during his first term. Hell, in his first couple of months as president in 2017. He let go of the pandemic response team. The team of doctors, that's whole purpose was to be monitoring for and following data and trends, trying to figure out if there was the chance for a pandemic, and then to come up with plans if, you know, there was one, and try to mitigate the damage and make sure it didn't become something huge. He fired them all and said, well, we don't pay people to sit around, and if there is a problem, we'll just hire more doctors. And then what happened? We got hit with a pandemic, and they didn't listen to the doctors anyway. They didn't go out and get an infectious disease specialist. They couldn't find any that were as qualified as the team that Obama had put together. And with the ones they did have, they didn't listen to. Donald Trump fucks up at every turn. And like right now, you have, you know, places are hurting because of that winter storm, the hard freeze, the ice. You know, you have places that normally don't get that kind of weather, that do not have the equipment to deal with it. And they're scrambling, and they basically have been left on their own by the federal government. But this is typical Republican playbook, going all the way back to Reagan. Remember one of the things Reagan said? He said, one of the scariest things you can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And, you know, a lot of Republicans have ran with it since then. Sad part is, there's a lot of people out there in areas that are being affected or were affected by this ice storm and this winter weather that voted for Donald Trump. They genuinely believed that he had their best interest at heart. That he was going to come through for them and he would never screw them over. They believed that 110%, and that, oh, the only people that were going to be hurt by Donald Trump's policies were those damn libtards. And now look at what they're dealing with. They're dealing with winter weather and no FEMA and all sorts of things. So, you know, if Uh, if Gavin Newsom is sending assistance out to those areas, great for him. And his state actually has the funds to do it. Anthony says MAGA was very gullible. You're mostly right. Not was, is. They are still gullible. It hasn't changed. Some of them have learned, but most of them are still very, very gullible. And I've said this a few times in the past. Anthony says you're correct. Well, thank you. But one of the comparisons I said is if you genuinely believe that a billionaire gives a damn about you and that whether or not you can afford your food, your rent, your groceries, etc. If you believe a billionaire it actually has your best interest in heart, you probably also believe the stripper actually cares about you and that the OnlyFans girl likes you. AB3 says, are you sure about that? Yes, I'm 100% sure MAGA is very gullible. Because they buy gold sneakers that have yet to be shipped. They buy Trump phones that they were told were going to be made here in the United States. And then they're, 2 years behind schedule? And still delayed? And then there's reporting out there that what you're actually going to get is like 4 model year old phones that have been refurbished. They're not even brand new for the price tag of what they were claiming to be a brand new phone. But a lot of them put their money out there. They threw it out there, said, oh yeah, sign me up. I want a Trump phone. America first. And 2 years later, they've still gotten delivered nothing. You know, they shelled out money for those NFTs that ended up being worth nothing in the long run. It was just a way to raise money. AB3 says, I see that the Dems taxing my money for a train I don't see in homeless. Yeah. Well, we're going to take care of that because I don't deal with the Republican MAGAs. All they do is argue and a lot of them report you and get your lives taken down. And at least while I can, I'm going to protect my account while I still have it. Cindy says MAGA is easily separated from the money. They are. He keeps sending out fundraising emails talking about him wanting to get into heaven. Well, last time I checked, the selling of indulgences died out in, what was it, the 1200s? You can't buy your way into heaven, but he keeps trying to get them to donate money so he can make it to heaven. Soft Place to Land says extremely easily separated. Oh, they are. He just comes out with the next best thing, throws out something and says, oh yeah, give me money. And they do it. They do it. Anthony says that is how he pays for his lawyers. That's part of it. That is a big part of how he pays for everything. He uses their money. And as I said just a little bit ago, if you believe a billionaire actually gives a damn about you, you probably believe the stripper actually likes you, or the OnlyFans girl actually wants to talk to you. Now, some do, don't get me wrong, but you know what I mean. We all know that at least one person who spent way more money than he ever should have at a strip club because he actually believed that the stripper really cared about him and really liked him, when we all know that when the money dried up, that most of them didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. Cindy says the grift of all time. Yeah, Donald Trump grifts at every turn. His whole presidency has been a grift. I mean, when he is upcharging the Secret Service to stay at Mar-a-Lago for rooms that he already has, that he could just let them stay in for free meals that he could let them have for cost because they're there to protect him, but instead he charges them, from what we hear, higher than what the regular person rate would be, and upcharges them for everything when they are required to be there to protect him. And all of it is funneled through his own properties, so he makes all this money, and he gets himself even wealthier. And Random Poster tries saying that, I haven't said any facts. I've said plenty of facts. But people on the right don't want to hear those, and they want to bury their head in the sand. Donald Trump, as far as he's concerned, he would come out, he would piss on you and tell you it's raining. And they'd believe him. Soft Place to Land says that's hilarious. They actually paid. He owes everyone. Yeah, he billed the government for his Secret Service stays. Anthony says he makes money charging the Secret Service. Yeah, he does. He charges the Secret Service for staying at Mar-a-Lago, which is his house, which shouldn't be his house, because I don't remember what year it was, but this came out during his fraud trial. That he took a deal with the city of Miami, or the county, I think it was the county for Miami-Dade, and had it declared like a historical site or something like that. And what part of the deal was to get a lower tax rate, it was not to be anybody's permanent residence. Yet he's been living there going on 9 years now, something like that. Danny says, stop drinking the blue Kool-Aid. Y'all are being brainwashed. No. We see things the way it really is. You think we're being brainwashed because we're saying things that go against the person you guys love and who you've made your whole personality. We don't worship politicians. We expect politicians to work for us. And when they're not, we call them out on their bullshit. Cindy says, I can't believe all of this has happened and everyone looks the other way. Some of them are looking the other way. Like right now, the Republicans in Congress that are backing him and letting him get away with it, they're going to be one of the first to dogpile on him when everything turns. It is... They're doing it because they think it's beneficial and for them, and that they are going to have more power by doing that, by letting him get away with things at this point. And then they don't have to deal with his temper tantrums for not getting his way. Soft Place to Land says, breaks my heart because wrong is wrong and everyone turns a blind eye. Yeah, it seems like they're turning a blind eye. But they're doing it because it benefits themselves. It is not about necessarily agreeing with what he's doing. If the Republicans in Congress thought it was politically advantageous to call him out on his bullshit and point out the grift and the things he's doing wrong, they would. But they don't think it's politically advantageous right now. They think it is, in their best interest to stay on his good side, in part because they are looking at the 30% of the Republican voter base that is hardcore MAGA, and they are hoping that they can keep them voting for him at every turn. Anthony says, sometimes we don't like seeing things how they actually are. 100%. 100%. Sometimes we have to step back and look at things and analyze it and say, What the fuck? And I call out both sides because the Democrats can be just as fucked up. We've had Democrats that have gone to prison. We've had Democrats that should go to prison. Anthony says Donald Trump grew up a privileged child and never did anything for himself. No, he's never done anything for himself. He talks about the word groceries and grocery stores. Oh, it's kind of an old-fashioned term, he says. Dude's probably never gone grocery shopping in his life. He's probably never pumped gas in his life. He's had people do it for him. There's so many things that he has never had to do that he talks like he knows what we struggle with. It is ridiculous. And at least a segment of this country are looking at somebody like him and saying, oh yeah, he gets what it's like to be a common man. Because in part they believed the lie Donald Trump told about himself, about how he just took out a small loan from his father and that's how he got started in business, and that's how he made his fortune. Well, you hear small loan, and for a lot of us, we think 5, 10, $500, $1,000, $1,500, something like that. We consider that a small loan, And then when he says he took out a small loan to get started, that's what people think. No, he took out a small loan from his father, and I want to say it was in the millions of dollars. I don't remember if it was $5 million or $500 million. I think it was $5 million. But still, it was in the millions. That's not a small loan. And his father, Fred Trump, kept bailing him out at every turn when things went shitty. Like the Trump Taj Mahal, I believe it was, that was going belly up. Because Donnie overbuilt it. He made it too big. Because he knew better. And his father sent somebody down with a briefcase full of money. They bought in for poker chips. Never played a single hand. And left with the poker chips. Because it was a way to give Donnie money as a gift or a loan or whatever. And they didn't have to deal with the IRS at that point. And it was a way to wash it. Anthony says Donald Trump never went to a grocery store. Yeah, I guarantee you, the only time he's ever probably been to a grocery store was when if he's ever been there for a photo op. Just like when he went to McDonald's and he was working the fry station, for a staged photo op where they had cars practicing. Like they would pull up, they would, it was closed. The McDonald's wasn't open. Everybody who went through, it was all staged. He was allowed to take as much time as he wanted to make it, etc. He got to put his head out the window and wave at everybody, get a couple of cool photos. I guarantee you that man has never worked a job like that in his life before. And he only did it because it was a good photo op and he thought it was a way to earn some points because Kamala Harris had a job at McDonald's when she was in college, which actually should have put her over with the working class person. But Donald Trump does that to make fun of her, and at least a segment of this country thought it was cool and great that he did that, not seeing it for what it was. Anthony says his father gave him $10 million total. Yeah. It was, I knew it was something like that. His father kept him afloat more times than what he could count. And Donald Trump was never a good businessman at all. I mean, what he was good at was selling his brand and making people think he was a good businessman. And then when things went under, he had ways of taking all of the assets out of the company, making himself a fortune while leaving everybody else to go broke and not get paid. Because says he's had to have an emergency diaper change in a grocery store. I don't want to be the one responsible for doing that. Anthony says he thought it was funny. And Cindy says he is the greatest stooge ever. Yeah. He is a stooge because as McDonald's cashed in on it, remember? Not really. That wasn't a McDonald's corporate thing. That was done by a private franchise. And they took some heat over it. At least that franchise did and stuff. The whole thing was dumb. Him going to McDonald's was dumb. But it was, he was trying to prove this 79-year-old or 78-year-old at the time billionaire. He was trying to prove that, anybody can go work the fries. Well, yeah, anybody can work the fries when you have 3 cars in the drive-thru and you're closed, and you have it all rigged so you know what the order is going to be and you know exactly what to have. And, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't like he was actually there working. He was playing pretend. Soft Place to Land says, I'm so happy to have found you. I followed. I have to go, but I'll be looking forward to your lives. Good night. Well, nice to see you. I'm glad you joined. A reminder, and I don't know, I'm probably going to go about another 15 minutes or so here. But a reminder to everybody that has jumped in that at some point later today, this live will be up over on my YouTube page at Analytical Iowan. I put all my lives up there, so if you ever come in midway through or you can't stay all the way through, you can catch the rest of it over there. It'll be up sometime later today. Anthony says he would have went broke without the extra $5 million. Yeah. Oh, he would have gone broke several times if it wasn't for his dad bailing him out or him finding ways of bankrupting the company without actually having it, if his businesses hadn't been actually incorporated where they were considered separate from him and they would have been connected to his personal wealth, he himself wouldn't be worth nearly what he is. He's one of the masters of moving money around and making things look different than what they are. That's one of the reasons why he got the 34 felony convictions. Anthony says, Trump thought it was funny, not me. Yeah. Oh, he thought it was hilarious. He was out. He thought he was trolling the libs and he was trolling Kamala. Oh, because anybody can do fries. Oh, this ain't so hard. Yeah, I'd like to see him, because I've seen how busy my local McDonald's gets in the middle of, lunch. And we're not a big town, but like a lot of small towns, there's not a lot of options. And about the only place that's genuinely fast here in town is McDonald's. I've seen the volume they put through. I would love to see Donald Trump or any billionaire stand there and do that job in the middle of lunch rush, trying to, get everybody out the door, people who want their food, 30 seconds after they've placed the order. He couldn't handle it. Anthony says the bank was ready to take the Taj Mahal. Yeah. I'm not surprised. That's the one thing with Donald Trump. He declares bankruptcy. And one of the reasons he had problems with the Taj Mahal, it wasn't that it was a bad location. It wasn't that you couldn't make money in Atlantic City with a casino. You most certainly could. But all of the experts said the casino should only be so big. This is how big the casino should be to make you money. Donald Trump needs to be this big. And I know you guys can't see my hands, but you get the point. I'm slightly off screen. He doubled or tripled the size of what the experts in the gaming industry said he could build it and still be profitable. And then wondered why it went belly up. Well, you have too big of a place. You got to hire too much staff. You're not selling out all your rooms. When hotels, they have to be at least a certain percentage full every single day or average it to make money. And when they're not full, they don't make money. and they lose money. And that's what happened to Donald Trump. And then you add in the fact that his gaming floor was too big. And again, casinos have to, it's a math problem, right? You have to have the right mix of slot machines versus tables versus size versus how many restaurants, all of it. And there are people that is their entire job. They spend a career studying how that all works. And they told Donald Trump it should only be so big. And typical Donald Trump, he knew more than those experts. And then he failed. Cindy says, overinflated and undervalued properties. Yeah, Donald Trump did that a lot. That is part of what got him that $485 million civil penalty to the state of New York. It was for overinflating and underinflating his properties. He would go to the bank to get a loan, say on Trump Tower, and say that, talking about his residence, and say it was a 30,000 square foot penthouse when it was really 3. And he would give them adjusted inflated stats, get the loan on it for $200 million, but then he would go to the tax man and say, well, no, it's only a 1,500 square foot penthouse, and give all these reasons and all this stuff, and devalue the property so he paid less taxes. He's done that for decades. And they've proven that in court that he did that for decades. Nobody's Fool said they told him that owning 3 of them would cause them to cannibalize each other. Right. That's half the problem with casinos. And I don't know if that's one of the problems going on. I like going out to Vegas. I've been there once. I want to go back. I like gambling. But there's a lot of the casinos out there that are owned by the same groups, and they're close together, and they have a problem where they're hurting each other for business. But Donald Trump, ever the most knowledgeable, refused to listen to the experts. He never listens to the experts. Listen to him. He'll tell you he's the smartest person in the room every single time. It doesn't matter what subject we're talking about. He thinks he knows more than everybody. He's told farmers and ranchers, how the agriculture industry works. Somebody who's never stepped foot on a farm to do a day's work in his life. Yes, I know he was at a farm in Butler, Pennsylvania when he got supposedly shot. Anthony says casinos must make so much money a day in order to survive. Oh yeah. With where I'm at, I've got multiple ones within reasonable driving distance. But they're away, they're far enough away from each other where they're still a reasonable driving distance away from each other. They're not hurting each other. So they can all make some money. Cindy says farmers are seeing now the hard truth. Yeah, farmers are hurting. I mean, sure, he got a small venue here in Iowa where he showed up to Tuesday night to cheer for him, mostly. There were some boos. Of course, he had to call those paid agitators because he can't stand the thought of somebody not liking him and thinking about him the way he thinks about himself. And they go to the machine shed here in Iowa. If you're familiar with Iowa, it is a rather well-known restaurant in Des Moines, the Des Moines area. He goes down there, and it wouldn't surprise me because it seemed to be full of Trump supporters that they were all plants. It would not surprise me one bit if they didn't reserve it ahead of time, fill it full of Republicans who they knew would cheer for Donald Trump when he walked in. Because remember earlier last year, he went out to eat they were doing something in D.C. and they went to a restaurant. And he got blindsided when diners at this restaurant were heckling him to his face. And he didn't know how to react. He didn't know how to react because he's never really been around people who don't like him. Lucy Dog says to the girls, yeah, they were girls. They were women. Anthony says they paid people to cheer for him. That 100% would not surprise me. Now, when he had people booing him at his event, at the small arena or small auditorium he was at, whatever it was, there were some people that were booing when he was talking. And you know what he said? Well, they're paid agitators. Well, why would he ever, he says that a lot about people on the left booing and going after him. As Lucy Dog says, every accusation is a confession. And that is a cute puppy in your profile pic, by the way. I like all dogs. Mine's sleeping on the couch behind me. Well, behind the camera. But every accusation is a confession when it comes to this administration. Where do you think he got the idea from? He got the idea because they're doing it. Mockle says, good thing he ain't going to this year's Super Bowl. He learned after the last. Yeah, he's not going because he doesn't want to end up getting booed. And, well, he said, well, it's too far. It's too far. Makes me wonder again about his health. I don't think his health is holding up very well. Cindy says, they don't have to pay me. I'll hate him for free. I hated him before he got into politics. I thought he was a dipshit. Him getting into politics just confirmed it. And he made it easy for me not to like him. Cindy says, me too. Yeah. He made it easy to hate him back then when you heard about things. Like, I remember being in high school, reading an article about one of his companies that was going under and how he found a way to make sure he was getting paid and getting a big bonus and a golden parachute as whatever, I think it was one of the casinos was going out. That he made money as his business was failing. And I remember reading that in high school and going, who's this fucking clown? I probably didn't say it like that because, well, I didn't swear nearly this much back then. Believe it or not, I was actually halfway, a good boy. But still, Anthony says Donald Trump did too much in excess. Exactly. And he has said some of the most heinous things over the years. We've heard it. We've heard the Access Hollywood tape about him saying, well, when you're rich, you can grab women by the genitals. He talked about walking in on girls changing for Miss Teen USA and how you get to do that because you own the pageant. He was there was another clip that came out talking about, was it Lindsay Lohan who just turned 18 at the time? He was talking to Howard Stern, talking about how she's got daddy issues and she must be good in bed, something like that. We've known what this guy was like for years. He was easy to hate. Mockle says, I've hated Trump since that New York article he put out of the Central Park Five. Yeah. He's never backed down from that. Never. He's never backed down from that. Cindy says, I hated him when he was a regular on the Howard Stern show. Yeah, some of those clips are coming back to bite him in the ass now. T.C. Lou says, back in the late 70s and 80s, he was always in the tabloids. I worked in retail and I hated seeing them. Yeah. Back, in the 80s, I was a kid. I didn't know fuck all about fuck all. But he was always around. He was always in everything. Like, it wasn't surprising to see him. Like, you knew who he was. Like, when he was in Home Alone, you knew that, it's in New York City. Donald Trump is there. It made sense, right? It made perfect sense that he was in the movie. because you had an idea of who he was, because he was everywhere. One thing Donald Trump has always been good at has been selling the brand Trump. But he's also been very good at pissing people off and showing us who he really is with some of the things he said about the people that he knows, etc. Like his clips on Howard Stern and other places were horrible. Anthony says Donald Trump was bad as a young man. I don't know a lot about young Donald, but it wouldn't surprise me. Judging by what we've seen now, he probably was even more emboldened back then because there was no social media. Not everybody had cameras, and it was harder to actually capture him for being as evil as he was. He wouldn't have gotten away with nearly everything that he did if everybody would have had the access to the internet and live streams and everything that we have now. Michael says, he always tried to sell that New York loves him, and we absolutely do not. Yeah, he wants to. That's one of the things about New York City, is he wants everyone to believe that he is like beloved in New York City, right? The best thing he ever did for New York City was move his residence to Mar-a-Lago. Cindy says Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump are one and the same. Yeah. There's been some theories put out that it's going to come out that Epstein wasn't the kingpin, that somebody else was. And if it comes out, I'm just going to say I wouldn't be surprised. Not in the least. Anthony says from the late 70s to mid 80s. Oh. Yeah, I'm sure he was worse even before that. Because what, in the 70s and 80s, he was still in his, 30s, early 40s? Back then? Something like that? Because what, he was born in 46? So I guess in the 70s and 80s, he was in 20s or 30s. But, yeah, I guarantee you, he probably took advantage of the fact that he had some money, a little bit of fame, some level of power, not nearly what he has now. And he got away with doing a whole shit ton that people never came forward of. And when people like that get away with doing things, they keep thinking that they're always going to get away with doing things, regardless of whether they actually do keep getting away with it. In their head, they're always going to get away with it. Yeah, Donald Trump is, he's in for a rude awakening. And when everything finally collapses around him, he's not going to see it coming. And that's before you start taking into account the dementia and everything, and all of his health problems. I don't think he is going to make it all the way to 29. I don't think he will. I think something is going to happen to him, whether it is the Big Mac that finally gets him, or whether it's his own party. But I just don't think he ends up still being president come January 20th, 2029. And he was joking in Iowa about running a fourth time. He's not going to be around to run in a fourth time. And even if he is, I think by then he is going to realize that, it's not feasible for him to win another term. Even if they somehow said and decided that he was right and he could run, I don't think there's any way that he pulls it out. Slan says Epstein and Trump were not friends. Trump was a whistleblower for your salvation and peace, which is hilarious because one of the things that has been their talking point about how Donald Trump was a whistleblower, typically informants or whistleblowers and stuff, they're still connected to the person. And a lot of times, they're guilty of doing something. And they get immunity for the something they have that they did in exchange for turning on the other person. So if they want us to believe that Donald Trump was a whistleblower, that means he probably did something bad with Epstein and got caught to make him a whistleblower. Cindy says even McConnell has gotten too old. No, McConnell's too old. Luckily, he's not. His seat is up for re-election this year, and he's not running for re-election. But you want to talk about old? McConnell's only in his 80s. My senator, Chuck Grassley, motherfucker's 92 years old. Chuck Grassley is 92 years old, still sitting in the U.S. Senate. His seat is not up for re-election until 28. He will be 94, maybe 95, when he is up for re-election. And the motherfucker wants to run again. Chuck Grassley wants to run again at 95 years old, 94, whatever he's going to be in 28. The guy's older than the first printing of the chocolate chip cookie, and he has been in the U.S. Senate longer than I have been on this planet. And the dumb thing about the state of Iowa is he doesn't have to campaign here. He holds one event every summer that he's up for re-election, and that is it. Mockle says, I don't think he'll make it past 28 for a third term the way he's looking. I don't think he's going to make it to 28 at that point. TC Lou says, thank goodness. Must be talking about McConnell retiring. Anthony says McConnell's retiring. Yeah, Mitch McConnell's done after this. I think he's realized that he is nearing the end. And he's going to bow out gracefully before something happens where he's removed from the Senate by other means. He's going out on his own terms. Now, I'm not crazy enough to think that Kentucky has the option to flip blue. However, if Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor, who is only retiring because he is term limited out, if he runs for Senate, he's already won statewide in Georgia and won re-election, I believe. I think he's on his second term. I'm sure Cindy can correct me if I'm wrong, because Cindy is in Kentucky. But I think Andy Beshear could potentially have a chance, at least, to flip that Senate seat. I don't know if he's going to run for that seat, but I think he could have a chance. And that would be a pickup that I wouldn't have on my radar right now as one that could flip. So, that could be a possibility there. Cindy says he's not running for Senate. He has presidential sights. Well, he could be a good candidate. A popular Dem from a normally red state could be something where maybe in an electoral map, he would, end up maybe flipping Kentucky once. It could happen. Mako says, my senator is unfortunately Schumer, and he's been in office since before I was born. Yeah, Schumer's been a disappointment, especially lately. He is one of the reasons why the Democrats have such a bad rap. He's sticking to old school politics, the things that worked, as Mako says, he's been in there for 45 years. He's looking at, doing things the way things worked 45 years ago. They don't work the same anymore. We need somebody in there who's going to do a little more fighting. Cindy says we've almost always had a Dem governor. Well, that's interesting. I will admit I don't know a lot about Kentucky politics. I know bits and pieces that I read in, that become national news, but it's hard to keep up on politics in every state. TC Lou says Schumer needs to go 100%. He doesn't necessarily need to go. He just needs to step out of leadership. We need to put in somebody else in leadership. As just a regular senator, not in leadership, he'd probably be okay. Cindy says supermajority and all the rest. Oh, so you always have a Democrat, but you have Republicans running everything else. Yeah. We are close to fighting a Republican supermajority here. Monkel says he needs to be primary talking about Schumer. He's been in office for too long for New York. Yeah. We have some of these politicians who have been around for ever and a day and a half, and it's time that we move on. Some of them are doing it on their own, like Nancy Pelosi not running for re-election this year. Other ones need to be removed. They need to be primaried. And Chuck Schumer, potentially right now with the way things are looking, I think he could end up not winning his primary fight. Same potentially with Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem may lose his primary fight if he gets primaried. Cindy says I'm ready to move on to more progressive politics. Yeah, and I think that's going to be the way we're going to have to shift, is going to be farther left. Mockle says, I don't trust Schumer enough not to be a thorn in the Dem side if he steps aside. Yeah, he could be. Kind of how even though she stepped aside in the House, Nancy Pelosi was still kind of running everything over there. And you could tell that Hakeem Jeffries was just doing the things that she wanted. All right, I've been going well past my normal hour and a half. I think I'm coming up almost on 2 hours here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody who jumped in and, all the follows, the few gifts. I appreciate all of it. I want to thank you for joining me. For anybody who jumped in late and wanted to catch the beginning of this live stream, it's going to end up over on YouTube, on my YouTube page, Analytical Iowan. I encourage you to go check it out. You'll also catch up on, I do a daily podcast. So if you want to catch even more of my content than what's here on TikTok, go check me out over there. And some of you may know me from the Rational Boomer podcast. Before doing the live and everything, I had recorded with Mike, the Rational Boomer, and I am today's guest over on his podcast. So, plenty of opportunities to catch more of my opinions on politics and things with all of those options. And with everything and all the crazy stuff going on with TikTok right now, I do encourage you to follow all of your favorite creators over on any of the socials where they have their content. Just helps them out, as well as if something happens and they disappear off of TikTok, or they can't post on TikTok, or TikTok has issues, whatever, you can still get their content on other sources. So this is going to go up over on YouTube at Analytical Iowan. The audio from this live will go up over on Spotify at Analytical Iowan, and you can catch all my TikToks, all the lives, and the podcast over there as well. So thank you for taking the time to join me here on this live. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and I'll catch you the next time I go live.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.